Hi guys, today we'll be recording a tier list video for elemental titans. So the first hero we're gonna go for is the all-star chef. I'm gonna put him in the elite category. He's a very good healer. He increases the attack damage of all his allies, and at 6 stars he'll also increase the damage of his allies, which is very useful. He's one of the best heroes in the entire game for granting buffs to your team. In my opinion, he's the second best healer in the entire game, but some people might bump him up to God tier if they favor him as their favorite healer. Now, let's go on to Chaos Saints. He's outrageously good, incredible hero. He increases critical rate and critical damage of all your heroes, massive multiple strike damage, steals enemy ultimate cooldown. He's just incredible. And soon I will be releasing a video on how to unlock him. It's just taking a bit of a while. Now let's move on to Dark Priestess. Yep, she's a good interrupter, a decent healer. However, there are much better healers and interrupters out there. And she's just not that good and her stats are just too low, so I'm gonna put her in stinky. I mean, this is just my opinion. Some of you might like her more, but in my experience, she's pretty stinky. Now, moving on to one of my favorite heroes. The Death Warlock. He's an incredible hero. He has an incredible summon, which deals a small amount of AoE damage on summon. He can also heal allies, although this isn't his main strength, it's just a nice touch to be added. His Nether Golem can be summoned, and it also stuns nearby enemies for 3 seconds, which is very useful. He can also chain together other units, and then they'll receive damage taken from random units. So I'm putting him in God tier, because I love the hero. He's in my team, he's incredible. Now let's look at the Defender. His stats are just really low, and there are much better alternatives out there. I just use him as fodder to upgrade my other light heroes. He's pretty stinky, so I'm just gonna drop him down here. I don't think there's much debate around this one here. Now we have the Dragon Rider, I believe. He grants AoE buffs and heals, however they're not very large heals. And there are much better AoE damage heroes out there, so I really don't like this guy. I'm gonna put him in stinky, because there are much better heroes out there, which I'll show you in a bit. Now, this guy here, he's one of the worst tanks in the game. He's so bad I've forgotten his name. He's a very bad tank compared to others, and his second ability just isn't worth it. It only reflects 30% of damage, meaning you still take 70%. He looks cool. He looks very cool, but that's about it. I'm putting him in stinky. Now we have the Executioner. He's meant to do a lot of AoE damage, however his stats are just way too low. And there are much better heroes out there to use in your team. His buffs are decent, but compared to other heroes on the list, they're not incredible. He is viable to an extent, but the All-Star Chef who we put in the Elite is much more viable, and they're both fire types, so if we just want someone who heals, All-Star Chef is a much better shout. But I'm going to put him in average, because he's not horrible, he's not amazing, he's just there, really. Now let's look at the Floral Fairy. She's a very good healer who's especially good in the nature teams. She can damage enemies and heal allies simultaneously, and has massive amounts of HP healed. She can also heal the entire team at once, which is very good. I'm putting her in Elite. She's a very good hero and was my first healer that I ever had, so she's going in Elite. Now let's look at the Frost Queen. She's decent. I mean, she can freeze a lot of enemies, which makes her very useful at times. She's got good AoE damage. However, there are AoE characters that can deal much higher damage in the game, so she's just not worth going into that deep at end game. She's pretty decent early game though. She has some good summons that can freeze enemies, but they don't really do a lot of damage, so I'm just gonna be dropping her in average. I mean, you could bump her up if you wish, but I think average is good enough, because we have other heroes which will be much better than she is. Now let's look at the Green Phantom. Great single damage hero. She was one of my first heroes when I got up to 7 stars. She's incredible. Her second ability can do so much damage. It's just incredible. And Tornado Shot's one of the best abilities on the nature team. So even without a nature team, she's incredible, so I'm putting her in elite. Very, very good hero. Now let's look at Hammerfall. He has very, very, very high attack damage. He's one of the few non-elite heroes that's on par with, or even better than some other elite heroes. He can buff allies and increase speed, which is very, very useful. He's a very good hero that can interrupt when it's with its first ability. Yeah, all around he's just incredible, so I'm putting him in elite. Now let's look at Helslinger. He has high damage on his first ability. His second ability, Gun Dance, isn't very good, but he is a decent character, but I wouldn't put him on as one of the best fire elite heroes. I had him leveled up to 7-star, it was a big mistake, he's not worth it in my opinion. In PvP he dies incredibly quickly, he just doesn't last long enough, so I'm going to put him in average. Now let's look at possibly my favorite hero in the entire game, Kensei. At the start of the game you can buy him for I believe a 99 pence pack or 1.99. And he's incredible. I would recommend buying that pack. It's one of the best things in the entire game. Best offers. He is currently my highest level hero. And he does incredibly high damage. He can also summon a doppelganger with exactly the same stats, which is outrageous. He's also a very good interrupter and can stun other heroes. He's just an all-around incredible hero, and I'm putting him in God tier because he's very easy to get, incredible at end game and early game, which makes him a very good hero to invest your resources in. Now let's look at this guy. I've forgotten his name, but he's a very good hero which can silence other heroes, which is incredible. The silence will stop heroes from using their abilities for 5 seconds, which is very, very useful. He's also got quite high damage and a very good hero, and being a dark hero makes him more viable. So yeah, we'll put him in elite because he's incredible. Now let's look at the Monkey King. The Monkey King is god tier in my opinion. The Monkey King's incredible. He can summon 2 doppelgangers. And he's just, I think he's a better version of Kensei, but he's very hard to get to a high level because his event doesn't come around that often. I think he's one of the best assassins in the entire game. Being a light side character also makes him quite viable. And yeah, he's an incredible hero, and I'd put him in god tier. He's just that good. Now let's look at the Moonlight Prince. I don't think he's that good of a hero, to be honest. I think he's overrated. His damage isn't very high. He doesn't stun heroes very long. I mean, it's just I'm putting him in average. He's not horrible. He's not that good, but he's certainly not worth the expensive deals that you see him up for. So yeah, he's going in average. Now the Nether Princess. Yeah, she's very good hero. She's high damage and can silence enemies, which is very useful in the arena. She has a very good AoE ability. She's better at the end game compared to at the start of the game, because there are better alternatives early game, which we'll go through in a bit. But yeah, overall she's an elite hero. Better at end game, but yeah, very good hero. Now, I believe his name is Nightblade. Massive AoE damage. I'm putting him in god tier. He has massive AoE damage, can stun heroes. It's not for too long, but the stun is very useful. High damage and can swap from melee attacks to ranged attacks and can increase critical rates. A very good hero for damage. I mean, what else could you want? So he's going up in god tier. Panda Master. He's just average. There's not much to say. Decent levels of damage and can disarm heroes for a short time, meaning they can't attack. You can also stun heroes for a short time, but there are much better alternatives out there. I mean, the elite heroes are so much better than this guy. There's just no competition, so he's going in average. Now the Static Wolf, or Static Fox, sorry, I think her name is average. Yeah, I mean, you could make an argument to bump her up to elite if you really wanted to. I mean, I wouldn't be angry with that, but I'm gonna keep her in average. She's got very high damage against bosses, but not very good in the PvP arena, which is one of the most competitive game modes out there. So yeah, very high explosive damage, and can summon clones. These clones aren't very strong compared to other clones in the game, so they're not anything compared to the Kensei clones or Monkey King clones, but they're still pretty useful, I guess. So I'll leave her an average. As I said, you can bump her up to elite, but it's your preference. Now we're going to look at one of my favorite healers in the entire game, Serene Guardian. She, in my opinion, she's the best healer in the whole game. She grants her entire enemy a shield, she reduces cooldowns for the enemy. I mean, what else can you ask for? Being a lifestyle hero is also very useful, so I'm going to drop her in God tier. Incredible hero. I love her a lot. Very good. Moving on to Shadow Master. This guy, he's annoying to say the least. He's a good late game hero for lightning teams with his ultimate doing a lot of damage, but he isn't worth the resources early game. He's a pretty stinky early game hero, not gonna lie. But viability will increase as the game goes on. But yeah, I'm gonna leave him in stinky because not many people are end game. So for majority of people out there, he's a pretty stinky hero. Now moving on to another tank, Shield Vigilante. This guy was actually one of the first tanks I ever got. He has high defense, a good shield, and very good in the water team. He's a very, very good tank. However, his attack is very low, but his high defense does make up for it. I'm putting him in elite because he's good. But there is a better tank out there, which we'll go through in a bit. Now the Soul Hunter. He does very high damage and can freeze enemies, which is incredible. He's a very good assassin hero. But he does require a good tank or healer in the game to get the best out of him. I'm putting him in elite. If you play him with the Shield Vigilante in the same team, this is a very good duo. A tank, high damage assassin, very good. So I would recommend that if you're making a water team. Now let's look at the static assassin. Okay. She does very high damage and can stun enemies. But she doesn't stun enemies for very long. So I'd say she's pretty average. It's quite similar to the static fox actually. I mean, you could bump her up if you really wanted to, but there are some other heroes in the game which are just so much better that I just want to leave her down here. Now, Stonegazer. She's a very good hero. Looks a lot like Medusa, actually. She's a very good multi-target hero. She can restore a small amount of her own health, which is a nice touch, I guess. Has decent damage stats, although they aren't massive, they're pretty decent though. Very good at crowd control though, which is very useful against, especially against some bosses. So I'm dropping her in elite, very good. So we have quite a nice water team forming here actually. But yeah, she's a very good hero. Now let's look at the Sun Prince. High damage, fires damage very quickly. This makes him a very good hero, but he is quite difficult to get to high stars and levels. But you can also increase his own stats, which is incredible. I'm putting him in God tier. He's a very, very good hero. He's just hard to get and hard to star up. But if you do get him, then yeah, go for it. He's incredible. Now let's look at the musician. Okay. He's a very good healer, but there are better healers at the start of the game. And he's more of an end game healer, if you get what I'm saying. He's very good in an all lightning team. But his attacks are quite weak, so you might as well just use a much better healer. So I'll drop him an average. The healers up here are just so much better than this guy. There's just no competition. Now, another one of my favorite heroes, Underlord. He has massive AoE damage. And it's just his damage stats are outrageous. Best AoE damager in the entire game, and is very accessible early game. I'm dropping him in God tier. He looks badass. He's just incredible. I mean, what else would you want? Now let's look at this mermaid. She's not very good. Average. She's a decent healer, but there are so many better healers in the game, but she's just not worth it. I mean, you could bump her up if you wanted to, but she's not even the best water healer in the game, so I just wouldn't waste my time with her. Now let's look at Time Walker. He's incredible. God tier, easy. He's very good for crowd control and works very well with the Underlord actually. They work very well together. They do very high damage. An excellent hero, and being a light hero just makes them so much more viable. And I would recommend leveling him up as soon as you can. He does massive damage and is usually the MVP in most games. Now the Totem Shaman. He's a very good healer and can also create a pretty good shield. And is one of the best healers in the game, in my opinion, and probably in the top tier for nature heroes because nature heroes aren't really that good. But he's very good. I'm gonna drop him in elite. Very useful hero and quite easy to get early game as well. Now the Tree of Eon. This guy's a very good tank. I think he's the best tank in the game actually. Very high attack damage. And being a tank, that's quite surprising, really. And he can also connect enemies, which increases the damage he deals. Best tank in the game, God tier in my opinion. All these heroes in God tier are incredible. I would recommend leveling these ones up if you can. Putting these ones in your team. Now, let's look at just Underworld. He does very good AoE damage. He can also increase his own attack speed on using his second ability. And when you get him into his ascended state, he is incredible. So he is certainly God tier when he's in his ascended state. But other than that, if he's not, he's in elite. So I'm going to drop him in elite. But you can easily put him in God tier. That's all personal opinion. But he's also very hard to level up, similar to Monkey King, Sun Prince. He's quite hard to get up. Not level up, sorry, to promote and get to higher stars. Now the Voltic Master. Yeah, she's pretty good. She does high damage. And she can cause stuns, which is very useful in PvP. She can also deal a chain damage attack, and she works very well with the Underlord. So I'm dropping her in Elite. She's a very good hero, very good in a Lightning team. Now the Voodoo King. This guy is just average. He's just bang average. He has very high AoE damage and can poison enemies, but he's not nearly as good as the Underlord. Underlord does so much more AoE damage that this guy is just a child in comparison. And I wouldn't bother leveling him up, to be fair. Now, the Warchief. The Warchief is God tier. Best nature hero in the game, in my opinion. He can stun, silence, interrupt. I mean, he's incredible. What else would you want? Massive damage, and is one of the best assassins in the whole game. Probably the best assassin, actually. It's between him and Monkey King. Just as I said, God tier hero, incredible. Now, final one. Wavebringer. She's good at dispelling, but there are better heroes out there. So, for example, Serene. I mean, she's not horrible. She's not great. She's just average. And yeah, I guess that's my tier list. So please like, subscribe, and leave some comments. What would you like me to go through next? Any other tier lists you request? Because I'm gonna be making some more tier lists in the near future. So yeah, please like, subscribe, and thank you. Have a good day.